Hey guys, I'm really excited. Today we're going to be making Minky car seat blankets, which basically are the same size as your typical flannel receiving blanket. I've found that the Minky is really great for car seats and for also just taking with you. It folds up really nice into a cute little size. It's very soft and comforting for little kids. This way that I make them typically makes 2 different receiving blankets, which is great if you want to back up. It also works well for gifting. I love making these. I love playing with Minky. I love finding different patterns with Minky. I hope you find the same joy in that. This is just a really easy thing that you can do pretty quickly, and it brings a lot of joy to the receiver, which is really fun. So I hope you enjoy this video, and we'll just get started. So the first thing that I like to start with when I'm making any kind of blanket is figuring out exactly how much I have of each of the fabrics. Obviously you do that at the store, but if you've bought it ahead of time, it's good to remeasure, make sure you know how much you have of both of your fabrics. This type of blanket does not require any batting, so it's literally just cutting the fabric and stitching it together. It's a very simple blanket to make. The only part of it that I found challenging and that most beginning quilters would find a little trickier is that when you're working with a flannel, the material is not quite as slick. When you're working with Minky, that back material is very slippery, and the top, because of the way that it's weighted, it just kind of moves very easily and can be a little bit tricky when you're laying it out. So that's why I'm taking so much time to measure and lay it out carefully and smooth out any wrinkles as I'm cutting. I also like making little baby blankets as square as possible, which is why you see me making so many cuts of the same fabric. One of the best parts of making these receiving blankets with Minky is that if you buy 1 yard of fabric, of Minky fabric, in each of your different styles. So I bought a yard of the coral pink color in the paisley pattern, and then I bought a yard of material in the floral pattern. It's really, really nice if it's a project that you're wanting to use as gifts for receiving blankets, if you're wanting to make one for yourself, your newborn, or small child that really would just like a comfy security type blanket. That's fantastic. But this pattern will make 2 blankets as you are able to unfold the Minky and cut that yard in half. So here's where I ran into a problem when I was doing this, and you can probably account for this a little better if you knew to watch for it. I was not aware that this was going on with the fabric. In my floral material, I just had to cut off all of the unprinted material. So that's like my selvage edge, but it was a lot more than I was expecting to cut off. So you'll see me in a second go back and recut my pink fabric because I had measured it based on the whole size of the material I was working with and had not accounted for that edge that I was going to lose. So just make sure that when you're working with the material, you know where you're going to need to cut extra fabric off before measuring the second piece so that you're not making unnecessary cuts. All of these strips that I'm cutting off of the edge, I actually save. You see me folding the cut edges in as much as possible. That's because Minky fabric tends to shed a lot, even when you're just carrying it between. So I will fold those different areas in so that when I put them in my sewing, in my like leftover fabric bin, I don't have a lot of fuzz just floating around all over the place. You just saw that fuzz fly when I folded the material. So I'm folding that cut edge in, putting it aside, and then I'm brushing off all of the fuzz. Once you have your material cut, you can sweep up all of the extra fuzzies if you're like me and don't like to have extra fuzzies everywhere, and then blow them at whoever is holding your camera because frankly it's really fun and it releases the inner child in you. All right, now we're on to the sewing portion. We've already cut all of our material, measured it out so that these squares are exactly the same size, and now we're just gonna start stitching. When I stitch, I don't start at a corner. I start about halfway between 2 corners. That allows me to have an open end that I can pull the fabric through it, an open space that I can pull the material through when I'm done. I'm sewing right sides together, just like you would with a receiving blanket made out of flannel. And I'm gonna go around the entire square. I did back stitch when I started so that when I pull it through, it's not undoing the stitching that I already have. One of the things you need to be aware of when you're stitching Minky fabric together specifically is that it is very stretchy. If you pull on the material as it's going through the machine, you will warp the edges of the blanket. It will look very like wrinkled, and it won't hold its form quite as well and won't look quite as nice. But it does pull through really easily. It doesn't stick to itself because it is so slick. So that's what I'm doing right now, is just pulling it through. You want to make sure that your corners are untucked. And then just like a receiving blanket made out of flannel, you're going to just go around the edges with your machine. I actually didn't even hand stitch that open 3 to 4 inch hole. I just used my machine, stitched as close to the edge as I could. I found that hand stitching with Minky can be kind of frustrating, so I felt like this is a better option, save me time and keep the process enjoyable, especially where I'm doing 2 of these blankets back to back. Then after you're done stitching that hole closed, you just go around the entire blanket about a 1/2 inch away from the edge of the blanket, making sure that your bottom fabric and your top fabric are matching up evenly. You don't want one to roll over the other. You want to make sure that you're getting both of those fabrics when you are going around the edge, and that's going to help the blanket lay flat. We are not going to, there's no batting inside of this. I don't need to do any kind of machine quilting across the top to hold the layers together. It will hold its form just fine with that 1/2 inch border stitched around the edge. You can do a decorative stitch, or I just did a straight stitch on mine. And that's really all there is to it. So I'm already done with that one, and then I will come back and do the second one, and that gives you a great blanket that you can make for yourself or for a friend. It's fantastic if you have multiple baby showers that you're going to, if you have multiple nieces and nephews or grandchildren that you're making blankets for Christmas. It's a fantastic little pattern that you can do really easily. I knocked both of these blankets out in less than a couple of hours. Because I have small children, I did have to do it over 2 nights, but it was still really easy, really simple, and it's going to be the best little snuggle blanket in a car seat for any baby that gets this.